Welcome back to the Turn on the Music podcast. My name is Kyle. We got CJ here. This is episode 18 for season 2. And we are in the third measure of the spirit of music, which is called Artism. But let's talk with CJ for a little bit before we get started. CJ, how are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. It's good to be back and getting into the book again.
Yep, I agree.
I really don't have much to add to anything.
Okay. Well, you took a trip to Albany and you did a little listening. I think you put together a playlist at least.
So it's really funny. It rained both trips up and down, and I the day before I'm like, I'm gonna put an audiobook on my phone, and I've never read the book Ready Player One, which is 80s nostalgia and all that stuff like that. So I downloaded it because the audiobook is done by Will Wheaton. Mm-hmm. And I like Will Wheaton. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a great activist for mental health. I think he's awesome. So I downloaded the book and I'm like, you know what? Let me see if I like the book. So I started listening to it on Monday on my way up. I couldn't stop listening to it.
Really?
It's just the concept is brilliant. The 80s nostalgia and all the video games and stuff that they talk about, I'm just kind of like, oh my God, I love all that stuff. He does such a great job reading it, you know, his inflections, the way he does things. And because he's such a nerd gamer or whatever you want to call it, you can tell he's excited to be reading it.
Yeah.
And this was written in 2011. So a lot of what they talk about, which it's based in 2045, a lot of what they're talking about is kind of scary because we're going in that direction, you know? And then there's a second book called Ready Player 2 that he also did. So I ended up listening to the book both days. On the way up, on the way down, it was it's a 15-hour audiobook. I still have 8 hours to go, you know? I really didn't listen to the playlist that I made of. It was I made Nickel Creek, Sarah Watkins, and what was the third one I made? Eva Cassidy. And I was like, no, I'm enjoying the audiobook. I'm going to stick with it.
Cool.
Yeah. So
nothing wrong with that.
Have you been listening to anything different?
Yeah, I actually went back to Nickel Creek for a little while.
Okay. Yeah.
For whatever reason, I was walking to the parking garage during the week, and I heard this song in my head, and I don't know why it was in my head, but I listened to it. I've been listening to it nonstop. I love this song on the album, the new album, Celebrants.
Here's a song for the good folks who we pay to look for bonds in each other's boots. Sure, this line is long. It's longer than my fuse, but you're just doing your job, and what a job you're doing. Look at us trying to move, for the Buddha pond buries our bad news, now and forever caught here between us and our due. It's platinums, golds, and silvers singing the Delta blues.
So this is called To the Airport. It's off of their newest album called Celebrants. And I don't know why, but this thing popped into my head, and I couldn't figure out who it was. I heard it in my head, and I went, it's definitely Chris's voice. It's not Punch Brothers, but what is it? It's not one of his solo albums. And then it finally hit me that it was the new Nickel Creek album.
Right.
But it's just it's a really cool song. It's about obviously going to the airport, and it's a kind of a tribute to the security workers at the airport.
Right.
It's just a cool song. It's such a cool story, and they do this little acapella section. Let me see if I can find it quickly. I just love this little acapella section.
Like it's our world, and for them all, running stoically through each kid unfriendly gauntlet, doing the work of two. When the boarding process drops her off next to a childless man of business whose cares are few, enough to voice his problems with her toddler on fumes. I heard her tell him off like, who the hell are you to assess this job that you could never do? Just put your headphones on and then away we flew.
And it's just so well done. There's just the violin part is really cool. It's just
well, she's
awesome. I love
brilliant.
it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Who's the bass singing? Because it's not.
It's I forgot the guy's name, but it's not their normal bassist Mark Schatz. It's the guy who produced the album.
Right. It's
He
the
used a
producer of
different
the
bass
album,
player.
right?
I can't remember what his name was.
Yeah.
But that's who's singing the bass part.
Okay. Because I know it's not his
not Sean.
Not Sean. Yeah. I know it's not him because his voice is not that low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then I went back and listened to the whole album. It's such a good album.
It's a really well done album. Yeah. Now I got to listen to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or tonight. You know what? You do this yourself. I'm going to go listen to it now.
All right. So with that, CJ's gone, and I'll do this myself.
I'm going to ask you this question though, because remember we talked about them and we said that listening to them is like listening to a group of friends. Mm-hmm. So has your week been one of those things where you just kind of needed to listen to a group of friends?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I catch myself in that time, like when you're kind of need that sound. Like I always go to them. Yep. I mean, you can go to them for whatever reason, but like it's just like we've said, it just feels like you're listening to a bunch of friends perform in front of you, and it's just it's nice. It's warm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure.
Kyle, I'm your friend. You can text me anytime you need.
No.
Never. So to the you okay there?
Yeah, I'm just gagging.
To the book?
To the book. So this chapter is called Artism. And hang on, I got an itch on my nose. And the tagline is, sometimes confusion is the doorway to clarity. And I start off right away. And it says, the sun beamed down, following me like an unwanted spotlight. I felt it was mocking me, pointing out to everyone that I was a fraud. Although the sky was clear, the clouds in my brain cast shadows over any remaining confidence, making my path difficult to travel. And my colorful attire was not helping my self-esteem at all. I read this earlier in the week, and I had this bizarre thought during the week. Because this is how my brain works. So we're getting ready for a big meeting tomorrow. It's our board of directors coming in, and there's a lot of stuff falling on me to get done. And there's a lot of people who are very appreciative of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and asking me like for more help than normal, and saying nice things like they always do, but it's more. And I'm sitting here going, I wonder if I'm just really bad at my job and they feel bad for me, and that's why I'm getting all these compliments. And I'm like, but I'm doing a lot of work. I'm doing it well. Maybe I'm not dumb, and they're just being honest. But my brain goes to, like I'm dumb and they feel bad for me.
But that's what we're
so
conditioned.
this kind of hit me at that moment.
We're conditioned to do that.
Yeah, I think so. Well, some of us are.
I'm going to say majority of people are conditioned to not accept compliments, and when they do accept compliments, and when I say conditions, it's like growing up and how you handle yourself. That's the first thing you do is you're like, I don't think I'm this. That what do they feel bad for? Like it's just like a reflex almost.
Right.
No, I totally get that, but I think sometimes we all do forget. Like, you're good at what you do. If you weren't good at what you do, you wouldn't be where you are.
Right.
You just feel like you could be doing more and making more and what all that stuff. And I think that's what does it to us. So
yeah, it was just a weird thought. So
I'm just gonna send you random texts now and just be complimentive, and you'll be like, "What?
You're weird." And then I've got nothing for like pages.
No, but I have to say though that's very interesting that paragraph kind of like triggered that. I haven't. I know that feeling of being complimented, and like my usual response is, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal." Like, when sometimes it should just be thank you or whatever. And that's very good combination. Like connection's a better word. It's a very good connection. Ironically,
like the next thing I have is talking about self-esteem and not being good enough. And
how far is that up?
So, page 46.
Okay, before you jump ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Because he's going back to Jonathan.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we should kind of set the stage because we really didn't.
Right. So
I just kind of jumped into it.
So he finished up with talking to his parents. Right? Yes. Yes. And then wait a second. Hold on. I'm looking.
His parents kind of convinced him that he should go back the next day. So he went back to his room to kind of formulate a lesson plan.
Right.
And then ended up not formulating a lesson plan, deciding just to wing it.
Right. Hold on a second. No, I think we're ahead of ourselves.
Are we ahead of ourselves?
Yeah, because that's what threw me off for a second because we were talking about. So he just finished with Jonathan. And he's heading home. Right?
Right.
And he was questioning himself, like, how did he know Jonathan's name? And then he's on his way home, and he gets home, and he finds out his parents were sitting at the table waiting for him. Right? And he said his mind was wandering and all that stuff. He said his parents were silent and his parents were just sitting there. And I say this all the time. That's why I underlined it. Silence is a powerful tool and patience is a virtue. I say it to my son all the time. I said, patience is a virtue. I said, I know it's hard, but we need to learn to have that patience. And it's funny because they do go hand in hand. Because in order to be patient, you have to be silent. But you don't have to be patient to be silent.
Right.
So it's just a very interesting. And he has a really great conversation with his mother and father. And then this is where it gets into page 46. So we'll bring that to what you were about to say. You said on page 46.
Oh, I'm on now?
Yeah,
Sorry,
go. I was just, you skipped over the thing I was talking about. And we were clarifying where we are. They're in their kitchen talking.
Oh, wait, I'm not in blind mode. Hang on. That's why I had a hard time reading. Blind mode.
Victor's parents are talking to him because he's not sure what to do.
Yes. So his mom says, "You don't think you're good enough, is that it?" And then Victor responds with, "I just don't want to let him down." And she responds with, "Is it really about him?" And he says, "My mom was smart. My main concern was about letting myself down, and she knew it. I wish I could find something to teach Jonathan that wasn't the real issue. I was scared, and although I had no immediate responsibilities back to Nashville, I hadn't decided how long I would stay in Virginia. I didn't want to start something I couldn't finish." And that's where she says that she should go back and teach him something. But, it's something that just, this is what I struggle with all the time is like not thinking I'm good enough at whatever I'm doing,
Yeah, no, I'm the same, but I get it. It's the same way with me. Like the random questions that you get, people come to you because they know that, like tech stuff. Let's use this for example, because we both work in tech. And similarly, you're in a college, even though you work for you're contracted. But I work in education. But I have friends like their son texts me, and he's like, my computer won't turn on, and I'm like, huh. And I thought about the experience that you had where you had like a power outage and your computer wouldn't pop on and you unplugged it and plugged it back in.
Right.
Honestly, that's how I answered him because I didn't know really of anything else at that moment. So I was like, okay, let me channel that moment. And I said to him, it's like,
Right.
unplug it, count 30 to 40 seconds and plug it back in. Right. And that worked. So
Yeah.
like we know our stuff, but it's building the confidence for ourselves to say we know our stuff. So basically it's just building our confidence into sharing what we know.
Yep.
And listen, I get it. It's one of the hardest things, I think. And I'm trying to be more on my side. I'm trying to be more confident with my words, and saying, yeah, I know this. But I'm also trying to say, you know what? I really don't know.
Yeah.
And it's okay that I don't know. I'll find an answer for you. But I really don't know. His father jumps in and he goes, and I don't know if I'm cutting, like, I don't know if you had any more to add before I go.
No, go ahead, go for it. You're good.
He says, you're just scared. That's all. And that isn't, okay. I'm going to read it the way it's written because I have no way to do it. He goes, you just scared. That's all. And that ain't never a good reason to quit anything. And I know I've always quit something when I got scared.
Oh yeah.
It was just,
Yep.
there was always that fear there.
And there are so many people that I've listened to over the years, like Cesar Millan being one of them, the dog trainer. He would always say that when you find something that you're scared of, that's the universe telling you to go do it. Like there was one episode I remember, there was a lady who was terrified of pit bulls, and he's like, all right, come to my place. We're going to sit with like 15 pit bulls. You're just going to sit next to them. And they just did, and she was fine, and she grew because of it. It was kind of interesting. So
do you put yourself in spots that you're scared of, or you're still working to do that?
I'm still working on it.
I'm with you on that. Like, I think also for me, it depends upon what it is.
Right.
Like if it's something simple and I can accept the fact that if it doesn't work after, I'll try it. But if it's something bigger and I won't be able to accept the fact that it doesn't work, then I'm like, no, it's okay. No, I'm good. Yep. It's like looking at a piece of food and going, no, I'm not going to try it. They're good. I'm sorry. I eat everything. So, and his father continues to talk. And he talks about how it's like mind over matter in a sense. He goes, change your thoughts, change your life. It's that simple.
Yep.
And he goes on a little bit further and he goes, your thoughts shout while your feelings whisper. Pay attention to both. That's what you need to do. I thought that was very interesting.
I'm trying to find where you are.
I'm on page 47, if that helps, at that top paragraph, which is a continuation from the page before.
Yeah, I want to go back just a little bit.
No, go ahead. Sorry, that's what. Yeah.
Because his dad says, and this is kind of leading into what you were talking about. His dad says, a happy person thinks happy thoughts. A rich person thinks rich thoughts. The opposite is also true. Poor thoughts, sad thoughts, sick thoughts, they all the same. Change your thoughts, change your life. It's as simple as that. So that's where you were. Got it.
Yeah, I didn't preface all that, so it's fine that you read. No, it's fine that you read all that. That's good.
And then his mom jumps in and says, life is always on your side, baby boy. When your goal is to truthfully help someone, you'll be given the opportunity to do so. Their truth will be opened up to you, and you will know exactly what to do with it. It saddens me that some people, especially teachers, will take advantage and undermine a person's truth just to replace it with their own. But you're not that kind of teacher. I know you're not. She smiled. And I've seen this before where a lot of teachers, not a lot of teachers, but I've seen teachers that are there in a way to bolster their own ego, instead of growing with the student, and that was something I was always aware of. It's a two-way street. And, a quote that I've always gone back to is like the Bella Fleck quote, where he's talking about his group. He says that I'm a leader among equals. He said, just because I have final say doesn't mean I'm better than anyone in the group. It's kind of the same thing, that I discuss like with my choirs, with my private students. Like just because I've got 20, 30 years experience more than you, it doesn't make me any better. Just means I have more knowledge to share with you. But
Right.
I learn just as much as my students do in some cases
Right.
from teaching.
It's funny. Part of the training that I went to in Albany, even though we were there for a software, essentially assessment software, the person spoke about how we need to show more than teach. And we had our discussion. They shared a lot of the stuff, and she said a lot of great things. So I went up to her after, and I told her about these two books. And I said, it's very interesting. I said, even though she said she did music and improv, so she's not a musician. She doesn't call herself a musician, but she's very much into music. I said, then you would enjoy the books, especially if this is your philosophy.
Right.
I said, you may want to check them out. I said, because a lot of what these books are is about showing versus teaching and how you acquire knowledge.
Right.
And they're trying to do this shift in education. And, if one person does it, then it may take on, but it's very true. It's funny. I had, and let's take this conversation a different way. I was talking to my friend, and we were talking about, like, when I grew up, respect-wise, my parents always said, if they're old enough to be your parents, you call them Mr. or Miss or whatever.
Right.
And that's how a lot of us were raised. But I'm in the mindset that if the person is willing to introduce themselves with their first name to a child, even if the child's 6, 7, or 8, then I have no problem with that, because
Right.
it takes the I'm an adult, I'm a kid thing out of the equation, and it just makes everybody a human being.
Yep.
So unless the person tells me directly, I don't care if their child calls me Chris or CJ or whatever they want to call me. Yo, that guy. So, but it's
Big hairy guy.
yeah, that guy. So I think that all kind of goes together.
Yeah.
And it does go to what he spoke about, is all this stuff about kids have the ability to be open-minded because they don't know anything yet. And then they learn everything, and they're like, all right, I'm going to shut everybody out because everybody's just ignorant.
Right.
Not our listeners. Our listeners are not ignorant.
No, not
they
at all.
agree with us.
That's right. That's why they listen.
Well, you can continue on that with hers?
Yeah, and then she goes on and says, fear is always ahead of us, reminding us that we have time to prepare. You see, we don't fear what's happening. We only fear what might happen. And that's, and the problem is, like, again, going back to my stupid brain, and I think that and I was thinking about, this week, part of what makes me good at what I do IT-wise is I'm so worried about what's going to go wrong. I always have a contingency plan for stuff that goes wrong. So it's like, in that sense, it's good, but in another sense, it's like it prevents me from doing a lot of stuff.
Do you feel it sets you up, and lack for a better word, do you feel it sets you up for failure?
In some cases, yes.
Okay.
But in other cases, no. So, like, here's an example. So, like this. So we're having our board of directors, like I mentioned earlier, and one of the guys came to me on Wednesday. He's like, this website that we're supposed to be demoing isn't working. It was working yesterday. There's some block on the network somewhere that's preventing this website from being resolved. And I would immediately like, oh, I'll just VPN you into my house, and that'll get around all the the blocks, and it worked. But like I had that contingency plan. Like, I knew that that's why I built a VPN back to my house, in case something goes wrong with the network. I need to bypass something. I can set up a VPN to anyone and just have them go through my network and make it work.
Right.
And I've got an external router there that sits there, and if I need to bypass the network, I can use my own router and bypass the network and do it that way. I've always got a contingency plan, so I'm always prepared that way. But at the same time, it's like there's stuff that I've always wanted to do in my life that, like, I'm afraid to do.
Because you don't have a contingency plan?
No, because I'm just afraid of failure. And I guess maybe there is no contingency plan for the failure. Maybe that's what it is.
Right, because you're in your work life, you've experienced all the possibilities that could happen,
Right.
which is why you're able to build the contingency plan on
Right.
something to that end. But if you're doing something in your personal life that you haven't experienced yet, yeah, you don't have any contingency to it.
Yep. Yep.
No, so I get that. And
Yeah.
it does. That's that fear of failure. And it's funny, you know, for the longest time, I always said to myself, I'm like, I really don't fear anything. You know, are you being attacked?
Yes, there's a gnat.
For those that are listening, Kyle just got attacked by a gnat. It's pretty funny. Go watch the video on YouTube when you comes out. What was I going saying? Everybody's like, what are you scared of? What are you scared of? I don't really have a big fear. I used to have a fear of heights, realized that was more psychological than it was an actual fear. And whatever. But I always had a fear of failure, but I never considered that a fear. But it's a legitimate fear if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because it keeps you from doing certain things.
Yep.
You know, and
Yeah, I've got a quote somewhere. It's in my Notion. Where's my Notion?
you had a notion?
A quote by I had a Notion. It's a quote by Buddha, I think.
Buddha's he's great.
Yeah, and it's taking forever.
That's what I need to get in my office. I need to get my Buddhas out. I got to welcome them into an office and put them on a shelf taller than me, which is not hard to do. But
the quote is, "Fear does not prevent death; it prevents life."
yes, 100%. I agree with that. Which is funny because, like you said, it's sometimes hard to get past that fear.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
Yep. For sure.
Going further down. I don't know if I'm skipping anything that you're going to say, but the mom says something. Life won't ever steer you wrong, but you have to do your part. Treat life right, and life will treat you right. You know that.
Yep. That's exactly what I had next.
Yeah. I think this is... I know we've known each other long enough that we both lead everything we do with kindness towards anybody we work with, anybody we talk to, anything we do. Even though we give each other a hard time on here, it's just that's how much we've built a friendship between the two of us.
Right. Right.
And, you know, when I read that, I'm sitting here going, you know, like, I know I'm making the right choices with certain things, especially when it comes to other people. But then it's like making those right choices for yourself.
Right.
That's and in a sense, and you may feel the same way, I feel selfish. That word that means that you're thinking about yourself. You know, and I'm sure you feel the same way because you're not that type of person.
Right.
Right. So it's just, and this is what, like, and you get that out of him, out of this book too.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, which is why we consider these two books like Bibles. So, I don't have much more after that, so you take it.
Sure. So the next thing that happens is he gets ready to go to Jonathan's, and as he's walking there, he had a thought in his that appeared in his head that was, the birds don't sing for money, they sing because the sun comes up. It was an eye-opening thought, one I could learn from. Which made me think of another thought that I heard someone say once. What if the birds aren't singing? What if they're screaming in pain?
Where have I heard that from?
It's a comedian. I don't know who said it at one point.
You must have shared that with me then at some point.
Probably.
Because that's the only way I would have known it.
Yeah. I don't remember who it was. I'll Google it and figure out who it was,
but that's very interesting. That opposite take on it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's, you know, as musicians, there are a lot of musicians who are out there doing it for the money, and there are others that are out there doing it for the love of music, and, you know.
That's why I like Nickel Creek so much. It's not that I don't like make a living off your stuff. Don't get me wrong. Right. I'm not disagreeing with that. But like, I don't feel as though they're 100% in it for the money. Like, I don't think the money is what's drawing them in that direction. I think it's the fact that they truly enjoy what they're doing, and that's why, because they love sharing that out. Like, I don't think if they didn't like what they were doing or didn't do it for the right reasons, they wouldn't have done Watkins Family Hour.
Right.
You know, which they don't really travel with. They just play because they live in California, so they just play locally.
Right. And I think the other thing is like, and if you think about the way they put out albums, like there's no set time that they put them out. They just put them out when they're ready.
Right.
You know, if you look at some of the other musicians, especially in the pop, era, it's they're putting out albums every year because
they're contracted.
Yeah.
They're contracted.
Yeah.
Look at Hannah Wicklund. She purposely created her own label and production company and to press her own vinyls and to do her own stuff because now she's not restricted based upon how a conglomerate or whatever you want to call it wants them to do it. And if she wants to record one album, play for 10 years and record another, she can do that if she wanted to. I agree. And I think that's when you start seeing those, because even Victor Wooten doesn't put out albums regularly.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's at his own record label now, and Bella Fleck and the Flecktones are doing the same thing. And thinking about it, like the groups that I really enjoy, that's what they do.
Right.
Robert Randolph and the Family Band, same thing. Mingo Fish Trap, same thing.
Right.
They put it Tower of Power. They've been doing it for 50 years. Like when they're ready, they do it.
Right. Very true. So he gets to the apartment building to go meet up with Jonathan. Runs into Jonathan as he's coming down the steps, and Jonathan states that he's going to go to the record store.
Yes.
But he asks Victor Wooten, he goes, "How is my teacher doing today?" Which throws Victor off. He didn't expect that. He goes, "Teacher? I'm not your teacher." "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm okay, I guess. It's a beautiful day, don't you think?" Changing the subject, because that process. And, he said that Jonathan, just kind of was whatever, moved along and took him to the record store. So I don't know if you were going to read this, but I think we should give a little bit of a background of Jonathan.
Yep, go for it. Yeah.
So Victor goes, "Jonathan told me that he had been diagnosed with autism. He didn't really know what that meant. He expressed himself clearly and easily and seemed to be comfortable around people. He joked with me and the salesman, displaying sense of wit that was well beyond the norm, and his knowledge of music was impressive. If this is what autism was, I was cool with it. In my eyes, Jonathan was blessed with artism. ARTISM.
Yep.
And then he goes on to say that, Jonathan said that whenever the doctors told him that he'll never be able to do something, he took that as a mean to move forward. So he was told he couldn't live on his own. He lived on his own. Couldn't play in a band, played in a band. Couldn't drive a car, driving a car.
That he bought with money that he made
playing in a band,
music.
right? Yep. And then he talked about how, some individuals with autism do not make eye contact, but Jonathan did, and Jonathan said he practiced this while he at the end of gigs with people that were drunk because they wouldn't care if he was looking at him straight in the eye or not. I have to say, whether that's true or not, that really is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like even like Victor says, it's brilliant. I love that whole little piece because he doesn't sit on the autism description. He just explains who Jonathan is.
Right.
And I think that's fantastic. And I'm just paraphrasing some stuff so we have a little background. They got to the record store, and then Jonathan stated that there wasn't any music, which Victor didn't notice right away, but music is typically playing. And Jonathan asked to preview a record, but the record owner said the record player was broken.
Hence the no music.
And then the repairman or so came inside and came in and left and said it couldn't be fixed. Jonathan said he didn't try, and the record store owner said that's what he told me. And that's what they did. They went on and Jonathan confronted the record a record repairman and record player repairman, and said, you didn't do your job. And without answering, the repairman placed a pair of headphones over his ears and walked around Jonathan and out the front door. So they don't know why he was rude. And by going further down, the record store owner apologized and gave Jonathan the record for free. And then this I thought was interesting. The sun was almost directly overhead. We left the store and walked toward Jonathan's apartment in silence. To break the mood, I made a comment about the birds. When the sun is overhead, animals are less active. That's why birds are so quiet. Have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
I've never, because you're more, and I don't mean this to sound funny, but you're more into birds than I am in that respect because you do photograph them and stuff. Do they, I've never paid attention to that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Oh, I never, that's
And so as a photographer, so photographing birds is a little bit difficult because the best light during the day for photographing is usually around sunrise and sunset because the light comes straight through, and when it's during the highest part of the day, like your noon, your 2 o'clocks, it's coming down, so you get a lot of shadows.
Right.
But when you're shooting with the light going this way, it's better light. But the problem is the sun's setting, you're losing light, and when you're shooting birds, you need to have a very fast shutter speed in order to freeze the action as they're flying.
Right.
So it's kind of this hard balance that you have to do to have enough light, but not the shadows, not the harsh light. So yes, they're also less active during the day, which is actually better for photographers because if they're less active during that point of the day, the light is also bad during that point of the day. So you avoid that part of the day. So it's usually the morning and the evening is when you go out to shoot.
That's interesting. Well, you're an ornithologist.
No, I'm not.
No? Okay. I tried.
I'm just a nerd.
Huh?
Just a nerd.
There's nothing wrong with being a nerd.
Nope.
4 eyes. So
look who's talking.
as we both wear glasses.
And I put my Kindle in blind mode.
And let's see. Let's go a little further.
So the album that they pick up.
Thank you.
Have you ever listened to it?
No, and it's funny because I do want to listen to it. I may have back in the day, and I just don't remember.
Got it. So the album is called Donny Hathaway Live. For those that don't know, Donny Hathaway was a brilliant musician, songwriter, and a huge influence on Stevie Wonder. And if you listen to the two of them sing, Stevie Wonder is almost, I don't want to say a carbon copy of Donny Hathaway, but they're very, very similar. So let's just play just a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say,
why not sum it up? So here's this. This is the opening track called "What's Going On."
There's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we gotta find a way to bring some love in here today. Father, Father, we don't need to escalate.
Very, very Stevie Wonder-ish, you know, down to like the keyboard parts, and especially it's in the upper register, you really hear kind of that Stevie Wonder sound come out of him.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, I'm sure you guys. I'll move faster. I'm sure you all recognize this tune once we get into it.
Picket line, picket sign, don't you punish me. Brutality, talk to me. You can see what's going on. Hey, yeah, what's going on? I wanna know what's going on.
So it's a great album. It's got the Carole King tune, "You Got a Friend," and Donny Hathaway killed himself in 1972
Before this the live album, I think, came out.
I think I think so.
That's what he's
and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and the story goes that he thought that there were people following him trying to steal his music. And then he eventually jumped off the roof of his hotel building and
in 1979.
79.
No, so this came out before 1979. I think the last album he recorded was. Hold on a second.
Hang on, I've got his discography up.
Yeah. Singer wrote many R&Bs.
Last studio album. Oops.
It was with Roberta Flack too.
Yep. Yeah, he did a lot of work with Roberta Flack.
Yeah.
73, 78 was the best of. I think I liked 73.
Yeah.
There was one in 79.
No, that's what they're saying. Like they were recording all day, and she said
Right.
he was good.
Right.
This is what it says in the book.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And he talks about.
Yep.
And they apparently, when he wrote this, he didn't know the reason why, because he said that he didn't have any drugs or alcohol in his system, so it wasn't something that was that. He said he wonders if it was the fact that famous musicians, their lives are right out in front of them, and it's that's the difficult part. Just to go back a little bit, because Victor makes a point to explain that, and we've spoken about this a little bit, which is part of the reason why we do our live show, is that the social event of getting a record and sitting down and listening to a whole new album with friends and family is not something that happens all the time,
Right.
because of the fact that music has become digital, and it now makes it a more, and not necessarily in a good way, but also not in a bad way, a more individualized experience. And he states that when he moved to Nashville, CDs had already been taking place of vinyl, and MP3s were on the horizon. And listening to music has gradually become an individualized experience. And he said it was the last time that did this. We did a live show back on March, I think it was March 30th, because that's when I was in Ohio with you, and that's when we did a listening of Nickel Creek Celebrants, and we played the whole album. We both did not listen to it on purpose, and we both listened to it for the first time while everybody else who was listening with us, and we read through some of the cover notes, and I hope we get to do that again soon. I know Hannah Wicklund has a new album coming out in October, and I'm thinking maybe we can kind of make that happen.
Sure.
Is pick one, and because I think that even though we're digital, even though we're live through a streaming service, you could still kind of bring that and make that a social event,
Right.
which is
Exactly.
what we're trying to do.
Yep.
So,
So here's a little bit about Donny Hathaway. So this is just about his mental illness. So it says, during the peak of his career, Hathaway began experiencing severe bouts of depression and exhibiting unusual behavior. In 1971, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, for which he was prescribed various medications. At one point, Hathaway was prescribed 14 different medications that he was to take twice a day. After Hathaway was diagnosed and began taking medication, his mental state improved. However, Eula Hathaway has stated that her father became less than diligent about following his prescription. Hathaway's mental illness wreaked havoc on his life and required several hospitalizations. The effects of his depression and severe mood swings also drove a wedge in Roberta Flack's friendship. They did not reconcile for years and did not release additional music until the successful release of The Closer to Get You in 1978. So yeah, I remember reading somewhere that he thought that there are people like following him trying to steal his music. I don't remember where I read that.
I
but
mean,
just to give you,
it makes sense if he had schizophrenia, he probably felt that way. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then just to give you, this is from this is in Rune. So Rune is the app I use for music, and they give you like articles on a lot of artists.
Not sponsored.
So not sponsored. Please sponsor us. So influence. This is really interesting just to hear what people have said about him. So according to Allison Keys from NPR, Hathaway's solo recordings are part of the foundation of American soul music and have influenced performers and R&B singers Alicia Keys and Aaliyah, to rapper Common, to singer guitarist George Benson. He was named the 49th greatest singer of all time in 2010, published by Rolling Stone. Justin Timberlake called him the best singer of all time. Stevie Wonder was quoted by David Ritz as saying, I'm sorry, when Donnie sings any song, he owns it. Stevie Wonder was quoted by David Ritz. Amy Winehouse called Hathaway her favorite artist of all time. I mean, just so many, artists, praising him for what he did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and the stuff is great. And the live album really is very, very good.
Yeah.
If you have not listened to it, it is definitely worth a listen.
Okay. Now that we shared all that, I'm trying to recoup.
Recoup from the tangent that Kyle has just gone on.
No. It's what it is. It's like a bittersweet thing to talk about someone in such a high praise, but at the fact that it's such a sad thing of what happened. So they basically listened to the album, the whole album. And then the last song, which is like a 13 to 14 minute song. It's the longest song on the album. There's a bass solo. And Victor...
So the track is called Voices Inside, Everything is Everything.
And Victor said, listen to this solo. And he encouraged Jonathan to continually listen to it. And he let him read through the notes to find out who it was. And Jonathan's response was, wow, he's amazing and very articulate. And he said, simplicity at its best. Which I think is fantastic, because sometimes the most simplest improvisations are the best, because they fit so nicely.
And what I like about that whole interaction is when Jonathan hears it for the first time, the first thing he does is reach for his bass, and Victor says, no, listen first.
Right.
And I think that's really important, is, because, sometimes a lot of us just want to consume, but we don't always take a moment to sit back and relax and enjoy what's going on. I think that was your Victor saying, listen, just take a minute, listen to it first. Really hear what's going on before you try to learn it.
And we talked about this because one of the questions we've asked people that we've spoken to on the podcast is, depending upon who they are. So if they're a vocalist, do you pay attention to the words, to the singing, to what are you listening to first?
Right.
And I do try to listen to everything all at once and then break it down. But sometimes it is difficult as a singer or a sax or whatever, and you want to listen to that main part.
Right.
So, it's very true. And that's a lot of what happens over the next page and a half, is that he's just like, keep listening, keep listening, keep listening.
Yep.
And then...
And like going back to the first song that we played, To the Airport, like when I first heard it, like it was the sound of it that captivated me. And like it was the fourth or fifth listen that I heard it was like, that's when I understood the story behind it. I didn't understand it because I wasn't listening to the words at first. It was just the harmonies and the structure, and I didn't focus on the words. But that's how I listen.
Right.
I go right to the instrumental stuff.
Right. And I as a singer, like I want to go to the vocalists and listen to their singing, but I really do my best to listen to it as a whole before I do that. And then I'll listen to the album again and again and again and again, and and then it goes from there. So I'm with you on that. So they listened to it for a while, and he then allowed Jonathan to pick up his bass guitar. But there is something that Victor writes. He goes, learning when it comes to listening to paying attention. He goes, learning in this way developed my musical ear quickly and thoroughly. And I agree with that, because I remember listening to singers in college to kind of just get a feel for the song that I was about to learn or whatever. But I also feel like that just works for everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'll ask you questions about tech stuff. And if I don't sit and listen to you, I don't know what the heck's going on. Because, you do have you're more knowledgeable on that stuff than I am, and there are times that I do have to, ask you a question, and I'm listening to you, and if it wasn't for those times, there are a lot of things I wouldn't have been able to do.
Yep.
So.
And I think this goes back to like what we've said, like everyone should sing in a choir or a band at one point, because like during those rehearsals, like there's a lot of times where like other voices or other parts are rehearsing their stuff. Like the first time through, like I listened to it, but then like the more it goes through, like I start singing the other parts, and because I can learn it faster that way. And once you understand what other parts are doing and how they interact, it gets so much easier to learn. And like, especially with like composers and stuff, when you start understanding the style, when it comes to like reading stuff for the first time, like when you understand the style and where the stuff is going, like it's so much easier to learn and pick up, and it's a lot more fun that way, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Victor does tell Jonathan that when he was younger, there wasn't a lot of people to teach him, in a sense. And he had, this is how he learned, unless the person that was teaching him actually knew what they were playing. And he goes, he just learned it the old-fashioned way, but apparently Jonathan was able to pick it up very quickly.
Yep. And I think as a musician, one of the best skills that you can learn is to pick a recording and to figure it out. Don't go out and buy the sheet music, but sit down and figure out what's going on.
Right. Absolutely. And then so they stopped the quote-unquote lesson, made plans for the next day. He walked towards the door, and Jonathan said, "I've never had a teacher like you." And Victor smiled because it lifted his confidence, and he said, "I've never had a student like you," which was both literal and metaphorical.
Yep.
He closed the door, and Jonathan was continuing to play that solo. And he said, "I left him just as I originally found him, with a bass guitar in his lap." And Victor left with a broken unicycle.
And that's the end of the chapter.
That is. And it just grows exponentially as we go along.
Yes.
Like so much starts to happen. Especially because of the next chapter. I think the next chapter really starts to pull it forward.
Yes. Yeah.
I really, and this is going to sound funny for a moment, but I really enjoy how Victor puts his struggle in this book.
Oh yeah.
I really do. I appreciate it from someone who struggles in a similar way. And when you read the book, it's not just, oh, it's nice to see that someone at his level went through similar things. It's just, it's nice to read that someone in general just went through those things.
Yep.
And, and it helps in a weird way build a little bit more confidence when it comes to doing certain things. You don't have nothing to say?
No.
Really?
Yep.
Are you reading anything else? Have you gone through the Awakening Spirit book yet? Have you finished it?
I finished it, yeah.
I have to start
Finished
reading
a
it.
couple
I have
weeks
to start, because you said it's very dense, so I'm trying to mentally prepare. Like in a good way, but
yes, dense in a good way.
Yeah.
And I'm dense in a bad way.
I was going to say, not like
a lot to understand it. So.
Not like me. So apparently neither one of us are dense in a good way. I don't float. No, just. So.
All right. So with that, we should see you all next week.
Yes.
For measure 4. Yes.
Measure 4.
And
Chapter
we'll meet
4.
another new character next chapter. So.
Yes. Character development is big in this one. But in such a good way, though.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like Blues Brothers. They're getting the band back together.
Yep. So with that, we'll see you all next week. Make sure you're following us on our social medias stuff, and we do live stream Friday night and Sunday evening, and that's about it.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah. Until
Let's
next
try
time.
again. Have a good one, everyone. I can't talk. I'm done.
Until
The
next
end.
time.
Yes, until next time, have a good one. Thank you for listening to the Turn on the Music podcast. We hope that you join us next week. Click on the link tree in our show notes to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can also subscribe to our Twitch and YouTube channel. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join us on our Discord. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend. And if you really want to help us promote the show, head over to Apple Podcasts or the podcast service of your choice and give us a 5-star rating. Remember, always share the music.
Thank you.